Welcome back to Left, Wrong, and Center. Today, I am joined by my brother, Grant, my younger brother, for those watching in a visual medium. Hard to believe as though it may be. I have Grant here because today's topic is broadly, we're sitting at about the 100-day mark for Donald Trump's current term. And I just kind of want to talk about it. Grant's not running for office for anything. It'll be nice to just kind of have a candid conversation because I have so many, like during elections, during non-election seasons, whatever, anytime anything happens, we usually end up talking about it on the phone. There's a lot of like rage yelling back and forth about whatever during the 2020 election cycle and the immediate aftermath of the cycle. It's interesting because, again, with the title of this podcast, it's Left, Wrong, and Center. I think last week I kind of broke down like where I feel I sit on the ideological spectrum. Grant sits in a different place, yet we agree on a lot of things, but there are areas of disagreement. So I think it'd just be like a kind of an interesting talk today to see how we're feeling about the state of the country. And I think we can start with a topic that is sure to garner feelings from both of us. Grant, let's talk about David Hogg.
Well, first, I want to say thanks for having me on the pod. I feel like a celebrity.
Welcome.
And, this is going to be like one of our phone conversations that we always have before, after, during, all types of campaigns. So I'm just excited for everyone to hear our banter,
our discourse.
But you did bring up David Hogg.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell the listeners about
the
fun?
David Hogg. How many vice chairs are there of the DNC?
There's a lot. I think there's 6.
6? Okay.
There might be more.
I feel like we just elected 3. 2 of them I remember being okay with.
Malcolm Kenyatta's
great. I forgot her name.
I forgot her name too.
But
she's a Latina.
I looked her up and I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And David Hogg. So for anyone who doesn't know, David Hogg was a survivor of the Parkland shooting in Florida in 2008. Nope, that was not 2008. 2018.
Yeah, that's good. There was probably one in 2008 too, because that's where our country has gone.
Yeah. And so he spent a lot of time after that shooting, a number of the kids did, advocating for common sense gun safety reform, which respect that. I'm cool with that. I agree with that. And to his credit, as we talked about, I think last night, he did jump in. He was very critical of Biden for those first 2 years. And he's basically like an activist online. And he was very critical of Biden for his first 2 years. But then when the primary season started, he jumped in and largely supported our nominee.
Yep.
And I believe that support transitioned to Harris as well.
Yes.
So this is not a David Hogg bash session. However, this is just kind of topical, top of mind. David Hogg has announced that he's going to be, I think it's a PAC that he's starting.
Yes.
Basically, funds are going to be allocated to primarying Democrats in safe blue seats that he deems, quote, ineffective. And I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I want to hear yours first.
Well, I think it's funny because I listened to his interview that he held with, I forget which. We're sounding very uninformed, but he had an interview basically where...
Was it CNN?
It was on MSNBC. It was with Simone Sanders, I remember.
Okay.
So Simone Sanders...
Because I know Jake Tapper and his unserious angle also interviewed David Hogg.
This is one of our disagreements. I love Jake Tapper.
Can't stand
but that's okay. But he was on Simone Sanders' show, who, if you don't know who that is, she was Bernie Sanders' communication director in 2016, I want to say, and then President Biden's in 2020. She's great on everything except, David Hogg. So she invited David Hogg onto the show. And the thing that really stuck out to me about that was that he just wanted to talk about, he's using language that most people don't associate with Democratic or Republican policies. So he started using words like safe districts, competitive districts, frontline districts. So he says, we're going to go after safe districts. So what's a safe district? That would be, someone who is elected without much opposition. But
Democrats who win by like 20 points.
As if you know me, I would say by like Assad margins. So they win significantly because there's no opposition. Because there's no Republicans who live in those districts nine times out of 10.
It's like when you see a safe red state or a safe red district and you say, well, Democrats have no chance there. It's the opposite of that.
Yeah, it's like it's Idaho. Like Idaho's a great example. So he wants to go after And he basically, in his announcement, said we're going to go after old, and he's, in my view, I think he's going to go after old African American and white Democrats, but he can't say the first part, so he said the second part. So he said old white Democrats.
Yeah.
Who are holding the party back. But then he's like, but I'm not going after competitive frontline seat Democrats because they have to win their general elections. And I'm like, okay, dude, like you're literally saying that you don't, that you just want to go after people for fun, basically, not because of what they actually have to say. Because if you want to go after frontline Democrats, you can go after frontline Democrats, but you'll cost them their election.
I think so. But when I hear these things, when I hear people, first of all, I'm so tired of. I think young people and new ideas are a good thing, but I also do not think that age equals viability. I don't think age equals fire. When you look at like, even, and I like Hakeem Jeffries just fine.
Yeah. Great guy.
I have some issues with some of the things he's done since he's taken over as our speaker. I don't think he's quite Nancy Pelosi. And so you look at Hakeem Jeffries, who's younger, and Nancy Pelosi, who is, how old is she now? 80?
She's like 83.
She's older, and yet she was so effective. And everyone, while she was in her tenure as Speaker of the House, was like, we need a younger voice. We need a younger voice. And there are so many people who could not do what she does, no matter what their age is. And I'm like, so are we just being ageist here?
No, well, I'm technically Gen Z. I think I'm the last year that Gen Z. Are you technically millennial?
I'm a millennial.
So I identify more with millennials because my brothers are millennials, and that's how I grew up. But the Gen Z, if you go, and I just recently deleted TikTok, but if you go on TikTok, it's always making fun of Nancy Pelosi for the tic-tac-toe comment or her saying something, and everyone, if you're in the public spotlight, you're going to say goofy things, right? But it's never about what she actually does, right? It's never about the actual success or failures that she had. It's always a personal attack on her age or her looks, which is really interesting, to attack an 83-year-old woman on her looks. And it's never personal. It's always personal. It's never about her actual policy platform. So these kids, and I'm a kid, so I'm not saying these kids, but they're going after these older Democrats who have paved the way for a lot of things. Yeah. So the Affordable Care Act, the infrastructure bill, all the things that
Nancy Pelosi, by the way.
Yeah, all Nancy Pelosi. She knows how to count votes. Yep. And I'll go back to this. So who are these Democrats that David Hogg wants to go after? So he won't list them unless I haven't missed anything.
So as an example of one of the people that I pulled out my phone just to read this, but Elijah Manley is going after Sheila Sherfilius McCormick from Florida, and the ad here, I'll show it to you, is all about Israel. So it's an AIPAC tracker. And it's follow Elijah Manley to help unseat AIPAC's rep Sheila. Oh my God, Sheila.
And I actually remember her. Yeah, Sheila McCormick, Representative McCormick.
I just misspoke her name like 84 times.
That's okay. And that's the thing with these. So she's a special election winner actually in 2021 or 2.
Yeah.
So she's young, which is funny that they're saying.
She's young, but she is taking
African American
money.
Everyone takes AIPAC money.
Exactly. But that seems so like this is the first one we have out of the gate. And it's like if we're targeting pro-Israel Democrats, which that's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole nother conversation.
We don't need to get into all of that here. But if that's our priority, if we are saying we're going to launch this new and exciting initiative and our first thing is Israel.
Yeah, that's the thing. No one cares. So here's the long story short. And I care about foreign policy and all that jazz.
Yes.
But no one cares genuinely about those things. People in these elections, the only people who care about Israel or Ukraine or any type of world affairs genuinely are the people who are super tuned in.
And to be clear, Grant is not saying people shouldn't care.
I agree.
Grant is saying that the electorate as a whole,
correct. It's not a top issue. It's not a top issue.
Yeah.
And I'm those Ukraine's a top 5 issue for me, right?
Yeah.
But it's not a top 5 issue for most Americans.
Right.
So they're going after these incumbent Democrats because, say, AIPAC supports them. And then they get upset when the AIPAC endorsed candidate wins, but it's not actually correlated. So just because AIPAC endorsed a candidate doesn't mean that it's because they were bought by the Israeli lobby. there's someone you're missing in the conversation, and it's the voters. So the voters are the ones who the voters have responsibility here. So with David Hogg's initiative, who's the people who keeps returning the old guard back to office every 2 years? It's the voters. And the voters like Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
They like Representative McCormick. They like these people. If they didn't like them, they would support the primary bid.
Right.
And you can see that. And typically, it's not the people that they think are going to be the ones that will go down in a primary. Every once in a while, it happens. Like if you look at AOC's first run, you know, the reason why she won that was A, it was genuinely grassroots. B, her opponent, and I forget his name, but he was a high-level Democrat who forgot the district. He didn't come back to the district. He didn't talk to the people in the district.
Right.
He was too focused on being in leadership on the House Democrat side.
Yeah.
And that's how he lost his primary.
Right.
And that's the thing is, you're not going to win against someone who's out there every day working for their actual community, like Representative McCormick there, or Jasmine Crockett, people like that. You're going to be able to knock off someone who is on MSNBC every single night. There's a couple that come to mind, Jamal Bowman, what's her name? Cori Bush.
Yeah.
They're not focused on the district that matters. And that's why if you're going to go after an incumbent, you have to make sure you're going after them for the right reasons, not for the reasons that you don't like their position on the Israel-Hamas war, or you don't like their position on something that has nothing to do with the district. Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman lost their primaries because they forgot their districts.
Right.
They were too busy focusing on getting the national spotlight.
Right. And I completely agree with that analysis. And I think
nothing against their positions, by the way.
No. I mean, we're not. I think we can talk about that in probably a future episode.
Yeah, for sure.
But that issue specifically. But like it or not, a lot of the majority of the American population supports Israel in this conflict.
Right.
There are people who, and it's a complicated issue.
Very complicated.
Whether you choose to acknowledge that or not, it is a complicated issue. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
There are people who have nuanced views on that issue. But Hamas and Israel are not driving people to the polls.
No, it's healthcare.
In either direction. It is health. We'll get into that.
Yeah,
but
sorry.
In either direction, because the people who were faced with that choice, having a candidate that was willing to listen to them on the Middle East, Kamala Harris, did not show up in November. I'm talking president now.
Yeah.
But like that issue did not motivate people to get out and vote.
It only motivated a subset of people who flipped their votes to Trump or to whoever.
Or didn't vote.
Because they chose one issue above all the others.
Right.
And here's the deal. Like for me, and you mentioned in the intro, you know, you and I have disagreements or whatever. I wasn't 100% down with Kamala Harris. I wasn't 100% down with Joe Biden. I wasn't 100% down with Hillary Clinton. But I'm choosing to actively ignore the things I don't like about them, right? Because I know that they're better. And I did like all of them, for the record. And I proudly voted for all three.
It's okay to have a candidate with whom you align on what, like 85%?
Yeah, and that's the thing. So if Joe Biden, so I thought Joe Biden went a little too hardcore on some issues that I didn't really see fit.
Like what?
The reason, do you know why Elon Musk is a radical lunatic now? Do you know the story?
I know bullet points.
So, and I'm pro-union, I'm pro-worker. That's all. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Joe Biden and his administration was way too pro-union in the sense that during the infrastructure week that they held at the White House, they only invited American union manufactured vehicles to the White House to be showcased. So that's GM, Chrysler, Dodge, Ford. And I support that. That's great. The biggest one is Elon Musk's Tesla. I'm not supportive of Elon Musk, especially now, right?
Yeah.
And I'm actually an OG hater of Elon Musk, but like going back like a decade. But he was like, we can't because his workers aren't unionized, which, you know, maybe they should be. I would support that. But they decided that it's more important to kind of show that they're pro-union instead of inviting other workers who have a product that aren't unionized. So the main point that I'm trying to make is that he went really, so 10% of the workforce is unionized, right? And if you're going to continually talk about unions, you're talking to 10% of the population.
Right.
And I support that 10% of the population. But 90% of the workforce is not unionized.
But would you say that is, I'm seeing a lot of discussion points now about how we don't need to chase what exists now, but we need to set the agenda and we need to talk about it. Unions are, in theory, very popular.
Yeah.
And especially throughout the last century, coming out of the Gilded Age, popularity increased throughout the 20th century. And I think right before Reagan, if I'm remembering this correctly, I mean, union membership peaked and then started to come back down. So,
it all starts around 1978 and it declines from there.
So, I mean, I think there might be a case to be made that Joe Biden is trying to set an agenda and say, workers should unionize, feel free to unionize. We celebrate unions.
Yes.
I see the point you're making.
It's not that I'm anti-union, and I'm not saying that. What I'm saying
we're
is
both
like
very pro-union.
Yeah, we're very pro-union. You should be in a union. Amazon workers union. Like, I support that. What I'm saying is, like, you're excluding a large group of other people who are still workers, even though they don't make a union wage.
Right.
And the thing with me is, like, you got to talk to everyone, not just a subset of people. And there's other things with all of them I could list, but another one, like for Hillary Clinton, right? After the primary, she backed out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. She was like, I don't support the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's something that I supported at the time and still do. She backed out. She helped negotiate it, which is hilarious. And then Bernie in the primary was like, the TPP is bad. And so she pulled out of her support from that.
And that's a trade deal, right?
It's a trade deal with everyone in the Pacific. That's a real country, except for China.
Okay.
And it would help the American economy. It is free trade. It is not protectionist. It is a free trade agreement with all the Pacific nations. And she backed out of it because Bernie pushed her to the left on that.
And why is the leftist position that it's bad?
Well, that goes into another position. That goes into, so the long and modern and I'm progressive, but people who identify themselves as progressive would say that they old school progressives, right? So if you look back into the 1980s, Dick Gephardt from Missouri.
Remember him well.
Yes, good old Dick. He great guy. He's okay. He's a lobbyist for the Azerbaijan so American lawmakers don't recognize the Armenian genocide. That's his real job. So now,
wow, okay.
But in the 1980s, he was a protectionist. So he didn't believe we should be importing any vehicles from Japan not China, because that's never happened, but Japan or Europe, right? He said we should only be exporting American vehicles, and there's documents on this. So the left position used to be what Trump's position is now, where it was we should only be helping American workers, everything should be made here in America, and it should be by American union labor, and we should not be doing free trade agreements.
Okay.
That was the old position.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was Bernie's old position too, and now Bernie is against the tariffs, which, I mean, I think anyone who studies it for 5 minutes understands why the tariffs are bad.
Yeah, and we'll talk about tariffs too.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Connecting all of this back to
David
David
sorry,
Hogg.
this was a little strange.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We got off topic, but it was all relevant stuff. So my frustration and my problem with the David Hogg approach here is, first of all, I haven't really had a lot of time on this podcast. There's been a lot of interviews, which is great, but I have a huge problem in today's day and age. Today's anti-Trump movement. Trump was elected. The Democrats on the national scale, I think, fairly or unfairly, I think it's fair to say that Democrats are having a little bit of a hard time figuring out how to respond. I think the reason that it's fair to say that is the first time it was a fluke and he lost the popular vote. Nobody liked him, but he squeaked by an unpopular Democratic nominee. And
he had a Republican Party who didn't like him. It's different now.
At first, yeah.
And
now they have fallen into cult-like
for sure.
following, and the Democrats continue to eat our own. So my problem is anybody in this moment who is spending their efforts on it's a double-edged sword because one, anyone who's spending their efforts right now on bashing or taking down Democrats is doing the wrong thing. I think ineffective Democrats, if you can define it, you can tell me what's ineffective about the person and tell me why you think they should be taken out by somebody else in the Democratic Party, go for it. If you are going after age, if you're going after perceived moderation, if you're going after Israel, if you're going after stuff like this, you don't feel like they're loud enough on the internet, that to me is not valid. It's not a real approach to taking somebody out that you think should be taken out. And we only have a year and a half until the midterms. Mm-hmm. So the double-edged sword piece of this is I'd rather this happen now than a year from now.
Yes.
But I don't trust somebody like David Hogg to be leading the charge. I think that we need, if we're going to primary incumbent Democrats, we need to have strong candidates who know why they're running, know that they can win in that district, and know what they're going to run on to knock out the incumbent. Because when you take on an incumbent, you're further dividing an already more than occasionally at odds party. And if you're running against an incumbent who you will ultimately just take blood from but not actually take out, you're going to give a lot of people ammo against them in their general election. You're doing the opposition's job for them.
And not all safe Democratic seats on paper are actually that safe.
Right.
It depends on who your candidate is as well. And I'll give two examples of that. So Oregon 5th District and New York, oh man, I think it's 18 or 19. It was Jamal Bowman's district.
Yeah.
I think it's not 19. It might be 18. So Oregon 5, right?
People listening probably don't care.
Don't care. So Oregon 5 is the suburbs of Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
And Kurt Schrader was the incumbent Democrat in 2022.
Yeah.
He won that district like 65-35 every single time he ran. Here's the issue with Kurt Schrader, and I'll admit it as a so-called moderate. Like, he was a little conservative on some of the issues, right? And he had been in Congress for quite some time, and he had a record that some of the things he supported in the past and in the present weren't the best, right?
Right.
But he voted with us, I think it was 85% of the time.
Okay.
He was one of the House members who nuked the BBB bill. Okay. A person who's not from the district, by the way, no ties to the district, moved into and this is actually a professional thing. There's across the nation, it is a real epidemic of people moving into districts that they have no connections to just to run for office.
Yep.
So Jamie McCord Skinner comes in. I think she's from California originally, and I'm not saying California like a knock, because that's what Republicans do. She comes into the district, primaries him, wins because the base of the Democratic Party is pretty mad at Kurt for nuking the BBB bill. Yeah. She loses the House seat in the general election. He was the only Democrat at the time who could win it, and now we flipped it back because we just nominated a normie Democrat in 2024. In the New York example, it's the flip of that.
Yes.
Jamal Bowman was so extreme that he was underperforming everyone, and across everyone except for AOC, they always all the squad members underperformed the top of the ticket.
Yeah.
He was dramatically underperforming the top of the ticket. And George Latimer primaried him because he's just not interested in being a representative. He wants to be a celebrity. Yeah. George Latimer wins with I think it was 72% of the vote. Yeah. When he was winning with 58%. Yeah. Another example, of course, would be Pittsburgh's district, where the incumbent Summerlee, and she's actually not that bad in my opinion. She keeps getting reelected. Yeah. She underperforms the top of the ticket. I think she underperformed Harris by 5 points. Okay. So yeah, and that's usually not how it works. Usually the local people overperform the top of the ticket.
Yeah, and I think if you have a candidate that does underperform but has a lot to show for it, that's one thing. But if I have a problem with the term ineffective, because it's like, what I always, the thing that I keep saying to people is, give me a list of what you want to see people do that they aren't already doing. The Democrats are in the minority. We don't have the numbers right now nationally, federally, in the House or in the Senate to actually do very much. We are able to, as long as the filibuster's around, we have that power in the Senate. But when people scream, do something, and then you get a Cory Booker who goes and live streams himself talking for 25 hours on the Senate floor, that's what a lot of people think that they mean by do something. They're like, we just need to see that people are fighting. Yeah. Another term that asked Kathy Dahlkemper when she was on, I was like, what does that word mean to you?
Yeah.
And she gave me a definition of what it meant. When you tell people to fight when they're in the minority and don't actually have the power to pass legislation, the most they can do is kind of raise the alarm. So Cory Booker talks for 25 hours, and then the internet, I mean, half the internet's like, oh my God, what a guy, he should run for president, and he shoots up in the polls, which I think is embarrassing. But on the flip side, you have people going, well, did that actually really do anything? So the term ineffective is problematic to me because nobody can define it, and nobody can tell us what they want instead.
Well, and the thing with that, with Cory Booker, for example, is that did the speech matter? Probably not, right?
Right.
But like you said, did it do anything? No. Did it change anyone's mind? No. But it is good optically for us.
It shows
right?
signs of life.
Absolutely. The thing that you said, though, that this is where I'm at, where it's like, we need to fight. We need to push back. How? Tell me how.
Right.
Because we can't. But that's the way our system works.
But half of the internet hears that and they go, that's weak.
It's not weak because there's nothing we can do.
Right.
Because that half of the internet that you're more on political, on my online
Political,
brain rot.
yeah.
Mine's brain rot. So the issue that comes is that they don't understand basic civics. And that's the thing that a lot of people in this country don't understand, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But you need 218 in the House of Representatives,
right.
and you need 50 to 51 seats in the Senate to have a majority.
Right.
Oh my gosh, the Republicans have 221 seats or 222 seats.
Yeah.
And the Republicans have 53 seats in the Senate.
Yeah.
You can't get anything done. There's nothing you can do.
And I think that goes to the heart of the issue right now, which is that the Democrats are the only party that are fighting for the American people. They're the only. It's been a meme lately.
Their agenda is clear, like in things that even I disagree with. Their agenda clearly, no matter what way you cut it, is there to help the working people.
Right.
It's there to help people. It's also forward looking.
Right.
In a sense, the Republican agenda, objectively, if you're just looking at it, it's all reactionary. It's all. There's no, here's what we're going to do for you to make your life better.
Who can we hurt?
Well, it's, let's shut down the border, which, yeah, maybe we can shut down the border, whatever. Let's deport a bunch of people. Okay, we deported an innocent gay hairdresser artist to a concentration camp in El Salvador. I don't know about that one, guys. The MS-13 criminal who was arrested, sure, why not? But then you can't even do that correctly. You can't even deport the bad people.
You deport...
It's some guy from Maryland who has a temporary protective status. You can't do that. That's against the law. They just don't have anything that they can do where it's going to help people like you and me who we have jobs, we have houses, we have mortgages. Like, they're not there to help them. I don't know who they're there to help, but they're not there to help us.
Yeah, I ask myself that question a lot. Is like, what is the end goal here? And I mean, some people would answer The Handmaid's Tale, but it's also like,
I think, and like, I have to be careful with this, but I think their main goal is to just enrich themselves off the government. So I've been talking to a lot of people, and the thing that really and this goes back. Let me bring this all the way back to David Hogg.
Yeah, no, I think it's all connected.
Yeah, so let me bring this back to David Hogg real quick. So you can see how the Republicans, they have no agenda, right?
Right.
They're going to try to pass a tax cut. They are going to try to pass a border security bill, which is obsolete because there's no one crossing the border illegally right now because they don't want to be deported to a concentration camp in El Salvador.
Right.
Which I wouldn't either. The Democrats, so Democrats, same situation, actually weaker majorities in 2021 to 2023. What did they pass? They passed the infrastructure bill. They passed
Chips and
Science. They passed a bunch of regulations.
Inflation Reduction Act.
The IRA, where they got Joe Manchin to write the biggest piece of climate history bill in the history of the United States.
Yeah, yep.
Which, like, again, you can hate Joe Manchin, and I low-key kind of do now,
Not
too.
fond of the guy.
But he wrote a very progressive piece of legislation. And Nancy Pelosi, this old lady who can't do anything, she is counting the votes. She's getting all the frontline Democrats on board. you're going to vote for this, you're going to vote for this, you're going to vote for this. She gets people like Henry Cuellar in the Rio Grande, who is very conservative, and kind of a criminal. To Jared Golden, who is a old school protectionist Democrat centrist from Maine. And then she gets AOC on board with a lot of the things. Yeah. That's how governance is done. So you have to have people who understand the levers of power. You have to have people who know how things work, and you have to have people who can count the votes correctly. And like when you had Representative Dahlkemper on, or County Executive Dahlkemper, you have to give some of them a pass to not vote for your legislation.
And that only works when you have
the
robust majorities.
And so I don't think people realize where the Democrats had seats between 2009 and 2011.
Right.
We had a seat in Idaho. We had a seat in a white majority district in Alabama. Mm-hmm. We had all of the West Virginia seats. We had rural Ohio. We had places that like are now like 90-10 Democratic or 90-10 Republican.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, there's one more point I want to make, and then we can move on to that. No, that's good. The Nancy Pelosi AOC contrast that a lot of people are drawing to kind of wrap up this David Hogg segment. We've talked about a lot of things, but like Representative Ocasio-Cortez ran to be the chair of the Ways and Means?
The ranking member, which is the chair in waiting for when the Democrats win.
Okay. For the Ways and Means Committee. And who ended up taking that seat?
Jerry Connolly from Northern Virginia, who, fun fact, flipped a Republican district in 2008 because Northern Virginia, which is now a blue bastion, was a conservative stronghold at one point.
Yeah. So she ran for that seat. She did not win. And you have people online who are blaming Pelosi for the loss of that seat, because Pelosi did not want her in that seat, because Pelosi feared the political retribution of having her in that seat.
Well, and the thing that you also have to notice about that is, and I'm sure people disagree with us on this, you have to get along with your colleagues too.
Right.
So, case in point here, she recently apologized to Connor Lamb for calling him. Connor Lamb voted more with President Biden's agenda than she did. Fun fact.
Yeah.
And she was like calling him Republican, whatever, and she apologized for it. But
the point that I'm making here, I think we're going to try to make the same point, is that she runs for this seat. There's always going to be organized opposition.
Yeah.
Pelosi wanted somebody else in that seat. She spoke to her people. She organized people and helped organize people. And AOC did not get that seat.
And the Progressive Caucus has more members than the Blue Dogs.
Right.
And he won that seat because he just worked the system better.
So she tried to challenge somebody for that seat and was not successful.
Yes.
And then it results in people on the internet crying about how mean old crypt keeper Nancy Pelosi, not the people that she failed to convince, and not AOC herself, put a corporate Democrat in that seat. So
which he's not. He's a actually pretty progressive guy.
It's an infuriating thing to me to see this, because when Kamala Harris loses, it's because she didn't earn my vote. When AOC loses, it's because the establishment is stacked against her. So that's my problem with a lot of these people who want to come in and try and usurp, and kind of tying it to what you were just saying, because I want to move on, because we've been talking about David Hogg for a long time.
David Hogg.
David Hogg. We have obviously midterms coming up next year. You were talking about how people don't really realize how, like, where we had seats in the 2009 to 2011. I mean, Democrats, if you've ever heard of the
we had a seat in Mississippi.
Permanent Democratic Congress.
Yeah.
That was eroded and chipped away at and eventually flipped during Bill Clinton's tenure as president by Newt Gingrich.
Yeah.
Because it's so gerrymandered now. But like the midterms are coming up, and if we want to take back the House, not just take it back with a razor-thin majority where we essentially see a repeat of that 2021 to 2023 Congress, it's an open-ended question, because I think the Democratic Party has progressed a lot since the end of the 2000s. How much variance in people's beliefs and positions do we think we're going to be able to get away with in 2026? Because if we want to win back some of these areas, I mean, there's only so many districts in the United States. Right now they are what they are, and a lot of them are red. Can we run and I'm not advocating for this. I am proudly pro-choice, and I will never not be pro-choice. Can we run a pro-life Democrat in certain areas where, this candidate maybe agrees with us on 90% of everything else, and then takes certain issue? Jared Golden, you just mentioned Jared Golden, voted for the SAVE Act, which I find abhorrent, and yet Maine's Senate seat next year is likely to be very competitive, but it's a purplish blue state. We're going to have to put up a candidate, and I don't know if it's going to be Jared Golden, but Jared Golden's very pro-gun.
Well, not anymore. But yes, when he ran, he was pro-gun. Yeah.
So it's like, can we, as a party, what's more important to us? Our purity and our idealism and continuing to push forward, are actually trying to act as a safeguard against fascism and saying, you know what, I don't agree with you on these 10% of things that you believe. And they might be very important issues. The issue of abortion access, the issue of the Roe v. Wade, Dobbs, stuff like that, that's non-negotiable for me. And yet, I would never support that in a primary. And yet, if it's, if there's a pro-life Democrat against a MAGA Republican, I would vote for the Democrat, because it means that we have somebody in office that is going to be a safeguard against the dismantling of our democracy. What do you think is coming next year?
Well, so I'm glad you asked that, Kyle. No, but
I'm curious, because I go back and forth.
I think it's interesting that you because like you said in the beginning, we disagree on some things. So I'm actually, it makes me happy to hear you say that, because it's a question. No, but you
don't get ahead of yourself.
No, yeah, but so here's the thing. So in 2006, when the Democrats won back the House of Representatives and the Senate during George Bush's term,
which was a big win for us.
I think we picked. I'm a nerd like this. I think we picked up 40 seats in 2006, and then we picked up 20 seats in 2008, and then we lost 60 seats in 2010. Yeah. So basically, all the gains we lost. Actually, not all of them, but most of them.
A lot of them.
So yes, it's a great question. I think that if we want to be serious about winning a majority to get things done, we need to embrace candidates who are a diverse political spectrum. So my centrist madness comes in, where I would love to see pro-choice Republicans and pro-life Democrats. No, but pro-life Democrats, pro-choice Republicans, anti-gun Republicans, pro-gun Democrats. Some of these social issues, I'm putting quotes around that, I would love to see them not become issues anymore. Does that make sense? Where everyone agrees, yeah, you know what? I think I'm going to do a Southern accent. Yeah, I think them gays can get married. I think that's cool. I think if we could just get to a point where it's yeah, you know what? I think women deserve to have reproductive freedom. That would be great. You know what I mean? Yeah. And these wouldn't be an issue anymore. But we're just going to kick the can down the road. So it used to be, oh, them gays shouldn't get married. And now it's, them transgender people, they shouldn't be playing sports, when it's literally 12 people in the NCAA, right? Yeah. So the can just keeps getting kicked down the road further and further. But my main goal in 2026 is we should take the blueprint that we have to win and run with it. And if you look at the 2006, 2008 was a little bit different, but it was we ran some conservative Dems down ballot. Mm-hmm. Kathy Dahlkemper is one of them. And that's a compliment to her.
Kathy Dahlkemper was very progressive on so many issues, but I
believe
believe
for sure,
she was also,
it was pro-gun. I think she was pro-life, and that's okay. And to me, that's okay. And you have to run where you are.
Pause.
Yeah, go ahead.
So many people that I'm friends with, or that might listen to this, might be hearing this and gasping or shaking their head. This is the kind of, I think conversations like this have to be had, because I don't think either of us are suggesting a full and total shift to the center. I think there are just certain issues in certain districts across the country. I don't think either of us would say we should run a pro-life Democrat for president. I think if you're running a congressional district in Alabama, and you have a chance of keeping a MAGA lunatic out of that seat, and that person happens to be pro-life, it's you know what?
That's the thing. So in the 2000s, again, when they won the majorities in 2008 and 2006, there was a large percentage of Democrats who were pro-life, right?
Even in the Senate.
In the Senate, too. But there was a lot of pro-choice Republicans, too. The parties have shifted dramatically in the last 15 years.
Did you see that video of Nancy Mace at the store? yelling at the gay guy,
Yeah.
saying, I voted for marriage equality. She's an abhorrent human being, and
Yeah.
yet she supported the Respect for Marriage Act. There's certain
Right,
issues
and
like that
we
where
need-
it's like
if no one can beat Nancy Mace, I'm glad that she voted for that. You know what I mean? And good for her for doing that.
yeah.
That's
Everything else,
Yeah,
garbage.
I'm not a big
But,
fan
yeah,
of. But if you
yeah.
can run a pro down, so I look back to one of my former bosses, like Representative Connor Lamb.
Yeah.
He ran in that special election. There's an ad. It's on his YouTube channel. His first ad. What he talked about was protecting Social Security and Medicare.
Yep.
Because again, who votes? The reason why. Okay. Pause here. The reason why people talk about Social Security, Medicare all the time is that's who votes. So young people need to start showing up and voting in larger numbers.
Right.
And that's the issue. That's why people aren't talking about things that affect you, quote unquote, because we don't show up statistically.
Right.
So going back to that. So you look at his ad, it's like Connor Lamb will protect Social Security and Medicare. Connor Lamb is one of us. He played football at Central Catholic. And then it goes, Connor Lamb joined the Marine Corps and served as a JAG officer. He still loves to shoot. And it shows him holding an AR-15. So he was running in a very conservative district. That's okay. Like, I remember, and we're going to talk about Joe Manchin again.
Yeah.
Joe Manchin has an ad where he shoots the Affordable Care Act. That wasn't my favorite ad, right? But the Democrats lost their mind, where he's like, I'm going to go to Washington and I'm going to shoot this bill down. And then he shoots it. 2018, he runs the same thing. This time, it was the cap and trade bill, pardon me. In 2018, he runs another ad.
That was, sorry, to be
Yes,
clear.
2010.
This is 2012.
2010 special election, he runs an ad of him shooting the cap and trade bill.
Not the Affordable
Not
Care
the Affordable Care. Because, sorry, I'm getting my things confused. So then 2018, he runs, and he has a shotgun this time.
Okay.
And he shoots Patrick Morrissey's lawsuit to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. And everyone loved it.
Yeah.
He's running in West Virginia. People love guns there. Let them do that. So you have to run where you are, not where you want to be.
Right.
And this is another conversation topic, but we should talk about the political consulting class as well, who think that they can just copy and paste congressional campaigns across the country.
Right.
And that's not how it works.
I remember right after the 2020 election, we held the House, but we lost seats.
Well, and I can go into that, where the seats that we lost in 2020, the 13 House seats that we lost. All right. Where were they? Do you know?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay. Well, I wasn't saying it like that. No, I hope no one knows because that's too nerdy. It was Salt Lake City,
Yeah.
pro-life, Democrat, pro-gun. Kendra Horn, she was literally an accidental election in 2018 in Oklahoma City,
yeah.
where she was great, but no one was watching. It was a solid Republican seat, and then she accidentally won by like half a point. Miami, the Florida Keys, they were all pro-gun. They were all national security types. The Iowa seats, there's 2 in Iowa we lost, pro-gun, centrists. It was all centrists who lost because in 2020, the progressives were running ads targeted in their districts about all the things that they supported. So they were like, we're going to have a Green New Deal. We're going to have, and people got misconstrued and people were confused.
Well, what I was gonna
and the impeachment as well was another thing.
What I was going to say was after the 2020 election, then Representative Abigail Spanberger, it's kind of like famously reported that she got on a call with some House caucus.
The entire caucus.
And was basically like, the defund the police stuff is killing us.
Yep.
This is why we lost seats. And somebody in Brooklyn can say that and still win overwhelmingly. Somebody in rural Virginia, because she won, her county,
her district
her area was a swing
at that
county.
time was a very rural district.
Yeah. So it's like, to the point that you're making of you have to run where you are. She's not running a conservative campaign
race
for governor of Virginia because
Right.
she's talking to the entire state.
And it's not even your positions, it's also how you talk. That's the other
Yeah, I
thing that
agree.
we need to. So there's a bunch of seats. Again, that Oklahoma City seat, it could be in play. The Salt Lake City seat could be in play again.
Yeah.
The Little Rock, Arkansas seat could be in play again. But you have to have the right candidate who represents those areas come forward and say, I'm going to run, but I'm not going to sound like a Democrat out in Long Beach, California.
Right.
And that's okay. We need both. And that's the thing that centrists get upset with is, or pardon me, people get upset with centrists on, is I'm not insulting the people in Brooklyn. I'm not insulting the people in Long Beach. Like, you vote for however you want to vote, but don't come after me in rural Iowa or rural Western Pennsylvania
Right.
and say you're an evil person for saying, hey, I don't support a magazine ban on guns, or I don't support an assault weapons ban, or hey, I think 15 weeks is a good ban on abortion, right? Which I don't agree with
right.
those statements. I'm saying
you don't
that,
have to personally, like we're sitting here in Erie, Pennsylvania, which
Right.
we haven't had a Democrat in the House since Kathy
Dahlkemper,
Dahlkemper.
right?
And I'm willing to vote for somebody who's much more conservative than me, as long as they are in alignment with me on the most important issues.
I'm not, and again, it has to be the right way. So like, I'm not going to go vote for someone who's like, yeah, the gay people shouldn't be allowed to get married.
Right.
That's something I'm not. But again,
that's something we should be passed.
But that's what we should be about. That should be passed. And that's the other thing. Like, I think most people agree gay people should be allowed to get married, right?
And most people agree on abortion too.
Right, abortion too. However,
there is nuance there.
There's nuances to it, and different areas are different polling areas. But if you look at even Seth Moulton in Massachusetts,
yeah.
who was basically, and I don't even agree with this. Like, I think it's pretty weak to go after trans athletes, right? However, I do think there's a legitimate argument, because it doesn't matter about how you feel about it. People are upset about it. Like, people think that it's happening even though it's not happening. So I think you can say, hey, I don't think that should happen, right? And he got filleted. His staff like resigned in protest when he was like, yeah, I don't think trans girls should be playing basketball with my daughter or something like that.
Which, if you think about
Which is not happening, by the way.
Exactly. If you think about that statement, it really is a throwaway statement, because it's saying something. If you take that statement on the nose, I don't think boys should be playing girls' sports in girls' sports. That's not happening. So he's basically saying something. He's saying something that everyone can agree with, because it's not happening. Right. It's not a thing.
Well,
but it feeds the right people, and it placates enough people where it's like, okay, I've gone on record and said this thing that doesn't actually.
It doesn't. It's not a real thing. So it's not a thing that really happens. And of course, there's the one example or the two examples of it happening. Here's the other thing, like. So for me, like, my personal position is Grant. Like, maybe at the college level, it shouldn't be allowed, right?
Sure.
But if there's a kid who thinks or identifies as a girl who was born a boy, and they're playing, women's volleyball in second grade, I don't really care. Like, you know what I mean? Let a kid have fun. I think sports brings people together. I think theater brings people together.
Yeah.
Let's not ostracise kids off the top.
And let's not like prioritize this shit over.
Well, it doesn't
else.
matter. It genuinely doesn't matter, in my opinion. Like, the thing is, like, it's become a culture war issue.
Yeah.
It's become a thing that people want to yap about. It's not a real thing.
Yeah.
But I think since it's not a real thing, we can say, yeah, I don't think that should be happening.
Yeah.
And I think it could be easy to say that. Same with defund the police. I think you could literally be like, yeah, I don't support that.
Yeah.
But but a lot of times they'll go, well, I'm in the police, but no. Just say, I don't support that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I want to ask you how you feel about the state of the country. In Trump's first 100 days, so much has happened.
Yeah, so much has happened about the state of the country in the first 100 days. Here's the thing that I think people are forgetting. A lot of the things that he's done has not directly impacted us just yet. That's the first thing I would say. A lot of the things that he's gone after are the easiest things to go after, right? So he's going after quote unquote illegal immigrants.
Yep.
He's going after federal workers. He's going after our military allies. He's going after our trade allies. Mm-hmm. You and me, most people don't interact with any of those people, right? I don't think I have a couple friends who work for the federal government, but like, I don't impact them. I don't talk to them every day, right?
Right.
So he's going after things that are kind of off in the far distance.
To most people.
And it is serious problems.
Yeah.
He is going after these people because it's easy to. And he's going after them because no one on paper cares, right? It is really bad, though, because I sleep peacefully at night when George Bush is president or Obama's president or Biden's president.
George Bush?
Yeah.
Grant.
But
You
like,
were a child.
no, but you know what I mean? Like where, I knew that our alliances were straight. I knew that we were working with our allies across the world in military and George Bush military conflicts with them, not with them, but on our side. I knew that the military was not being paraded around like a weapon. I knew that our Secretary of Defense wasn't
a drunk sending
war plans
Yeah.
In a group chat. I knew that the research maybe that could find the cure to cancer, right, was still being done. Like I slept peacefully at night. These are things that people all actually want from government, but they don't want to pay for them. And that's the thing that is the double-edged sword here. So I think it's been a disastrous first 100 days. I think that we're going to be seeing it in the future. The one last thing before I ask you how you think the first 100 days have gone is that the tariffs, I'm of the mind that he keeps stopping.
Mm-hmm.
Just let's do it. Let's go. He wants to run on it.
That's said in cynicism, by the way.
Yeah, but like let's do it. You know what I mean? But not actually. But like he is stopping and starting because he just wants chaos and he operates in chaos. If the tariffs actually went into effect the way that he had laid them out,
Yeah.
we would be so screwed. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
And they are and like I agree with the Chinese tariffs, right? So don't get me wrong on that. But like the ones against our trading partners who are friends, it's absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But he's going after things that are so far distant from most Americans that most Americans are like, oh, those liberals are just crying.
Yeah.
But they're real things.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts?
I agree with a lot of what you said. I'm kind of numb. It has been an infuriating time. And not in a pearl clutching way, and not in like a, oh, has he no decency kind of way. It's been an infuriating time because we have done this before. We elected him in the thing that I will never, until I'm dead, will never be over, is we elected him in 2016 over the most qualified person to ever run for the office. He came in, he kind of rode the Obama economy for a while. Everyone gave him credit for it.
Which is an undeniable fact, by the way.
Right.
That's the thing that people don't, like, Obama did rescue the economy.
Yes.
It was very slow
Yeah.
to rescue the economy,
Yeah.
but it was him.
It takes time.
And it's same thing with the balanced budget, by the way,
Yeah.
from the 90s. It was Bill Clinton's budget that did that.
Yeah.
So continue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm kind of just numb because we did it in 2016. He came in, he rode the economic wave. He was ugly and mean, and the tweets and all of the rhetoric, and embarrassed us on the global stage, whatever. It was a really bad first term. Then COVID happened, and I think that is what solidified his loss. I think, potentially unpopular take here, I think Trump was on track to win re-election, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
Because Biden did really, really well in the popular vote. He flipped 2 states, but I think people felt an immediate inconvenience in their life, and that is why they either stayed home or flipped to vote for Joe Biden in 2020. We saw that leadership. We saw his lack of leadership and what he did in his first term. We ousted him, and then we immediately forgot what we supposedly learned. And this country went crazy. Biden had a really solid first 6 months where I felt everyone was kind of getting it, and it was like, okay, we're doing well. Then the Afghanistan thing happened, and then his approval started to plummet, and suddenly everything is Joe Biden's fault. Then 2024 happens. Joe Biden runs for re-election, which I've already talked about the fact that he probably should not have done that.
Yeah, I agree.
We listen to the voter. I mean, Joe Biden won that primary by, like you say, Assad margins. Like, I mean, it was not even remotely competitive.
It was not close.
Not remotely competitive. When you voted for Joe Biden in the primary election, you voted for Kamala Harris as his second in command. Joe Biden has one bad debate in June, and it was a bad debate.
It was really bad.
It was very bad.
Yeah.
Had a really bad night. And then for a month, it's wall-to-wall coverage of Biden old and nothing about the soon-to-be convicted. When did he get convicted?
In July.
So soon-to-be convicted felon, which it's clear America doesn't care about anymore unless it's a Democrat. And then we listened to people. People were crying out, we need to replace our nominee. The only person it was going to be was Harris. And that's what I said the minute he got off that debate stage was all the people whining and crying. I literally have like a Facebook post from the next day. It was like,
well, and that's the thing that they don't, and I'm with you. So here's and maybe Kamala Harris wouldn't be the person I voted for in a primary, right? But at that point, it was if you even put it to a primary, it would have been Kamala Harris.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
But so we listened to our people, but like the day after the debate, I remember writing something like, okay, if it's not Biden, it's Harris. And if it's Harris, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What responsibility are you going to take to make sure that your friend, who's a little bit racist and a little bit sexist in the Rust Belt, votes? What are you going to do to make sure that they vote for her? I was concerned about the reluctant Republicans who flipped to Biden in 20.
Yeah.
Because he's an old white man. And, Harris.
They held, though, for Harris.
They did hold for Harris, which is an important thing that we can talk about anytime.
Yeah.
Her Liz Cheney parade across the Rust Belt paid off.
It did work.
With that demographic. And sorry, I'm getting off track here.
Sorry.
I'm just numb. What I'm trying to say is I'm numb because Harris was voted in as Biden's vice president. Harris was voted in as the second in command. Financially, she was the only person entitled to that war chest. He had raised however much money.
Her name is on the account.
Correct.
Yeah.
So she gets the money. She's also the closest to an incumbent that we had, which up until now was an advantage in an election. And she takes over. She spends a month reacquainting herself with the country. Her numbers shoot up. The blue wave was real. The red wave was just bigger. Anyway, the reason I am numb is because we did it again. And everyone kept saying, oh, it feels like 2020 all over, or 2016 all over again. And I talked myself into believing, okay, no, it's going to be different. It's going to be fine. We learned our lesson. We did not learn our lesson. And this time, for those first 4 years and really the last 8, there's always been a Hillary warned us video to fall back on, a Hillary warned us tweet. And the things that Kamala warned us about are so much more severe than the things Hillary warned us about. And we have watched so many of those things unfold in 3 months. And so I feel nothing when I see the protests on April 5th, when I see people filling the streets with their signs. And it's always these clever little sayings that are supposed to be funny. I feel nothing. I went to one of the women's marches in 2018. And I thought the signs were funny, and it was like, okay, this is cool. We're all in this together. We all have each other's backs. We find solidarity and we find community in these groups of people who are reacting to a fluke election. And this time I don't, because it's like, we already did this. We've already been through this. This is the second time we are doing this. It's so much worse. And everybody knew what was at stake. In my opinion, there is no argument to be made for ignorance there. And this is not even an opinion piece. I'm going to go beyond that and say there's no argument to be made that she would have been a worse president or that anything that's happening right now would have happened under a President Harris. People knew what the stakes of this election were. And if you look at the map from last year, I'm sorry if I'm boring you. If you look at the map from last year, everyone's acting as though we lurched rightward. We did not lurch rightward. If you look at the gross numbers of votes between 2020 and 2024, you see some modest gains for Trump in all of these states. And you see a huge drop off from Biden to Harris. People stayed home. People did not show up. And all of that was the result of not only a relentless media attack on the Biden administration and on Harris, but rampant bad faith, misinformation all over the internet, and people saying, well, Harris is just as bad. Name the issue, and it's the two parties are the same. Suddenly, Trump is in office, and we're begging for Kamala to come save us. Why isn't she out talking? Why isn't she doing that? So it's like people are aware, under their terrible takes, that the two parties are not the same and that Harris would have been a better president, and yet they sat out anyway. I feel nothing. I feel nothing when I see the protests. I feel nothing when I see Trump's approval numbers sinking rapidly, by the way. A Reuters Ipsos poll from this morning had him at 42% approval. That's like lower than it was 2 weeks ago.
That's nice.
I feel nothing because it's like, what does this mean for 4 years from now? Because I think during the special elections and post Dobbs, when we would see Democrats overperforming, and when we had that midterm election in 2022, it was like, okay, people are realizing what's going on. They're waking up. And then it didn't carry over to a presidential election. And it's like, okay, so I have no faith in people. Even as we're watching some of these things repeat, Democrats are overperforming in special elections across the country. I have no faith that we are going to learn our lesson and unify around a national leader.
Well, yeah, so I totally agree with most of what you said. I disagree on some of the things you said, but I would say 90% of what you said I agree with. So the thing that really bugs me, and I'm tailgating off of what you had to say, is, and I won't name the organization because I've laid them out on social media a couple times, but there's an organization here in Erie County. It's a national organization. They were dormant for 4 years. Well,
the Democratic Socialists of America?
Well, no, I mean, I can name them if I'm talking about another one because they're well-intentioned. So I'm not going to knock people who want to be well-intentioned. DSA, I don't think are well-intentioned.
Not at all.
But this organization, they were dormant for 4 years. They weren't involved in the re-elect. They weren't really involved in the election in 2020. We were out there in 2020. I never saw them. The day Trump gets elected, they're like, we're back. And I'm like, wait a minute. Or pardon me, the day that Trump gets inaugurated, they're like, we're back. And we're going to put on all these rallies, which is what you're talking about. It's the same organization who puts them on. And it's Indivisible.
Okay.
So they are.
Cut that out.
No, it doesn't matter. It's Indivisible. They're fine. Like, I support what they're doing. But where were you when... And this is my favorite quote, and it's from John Kerry, actually, but it's he's quoting someone, but he's talking about what he witnessed in Vietnam, right? And he's in front of the Senate, testifying about the war crimes he witnessed and how bad the war in Vietnam was. And he said, we're here because we're the winter soldiers. He goes, we're not the summertime patriots. He goes, this time calls for winter soldiers, and that's why we're here. So at the time that he was protesting, it was not during like the hippie, we love everyone phase. It was after that.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're still mad about Vietnam, and we're still mad about what's going on, and we're not going to let this go.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of sunshine patriots who, when it's fun, they're all out there.
Or when there's something to fight against, they're all out there.
They're all out there. They'll go up to the rallies. They'll go, lead a chant at a rally.
Mm-hmm.
They'll take their picture at the rally. But when it's time to actually do the work, to actually get someone across the finish line, they're nowhere to be found. You ask them, and not to be critical, but it's a lot of people.
Be critical, by all means.
It's a lot of people, and I'm glad that they're engaged now. But if we elect whoever in 2028, Gavin Newsom or Andy Beshear or Wes Moore,
or unknown,
Mark Cuban, they are going to be quiet. You won't hear from them.
Right.
They will be gone. And the thing is,
because they think that their vote is a love letter rather than a mechanism.
But the thing is, yes, exactly. And this is kind of personal to me, where it's like, I vote for people all the time. Like, I vote I've missed one election in my life. It was 2017. I had an exam at University Park. I couldn't get home in time. There was no mail-in voting. True story. I had an exam, couldn't make it. I vote every year.
Yeah. 2
times a year.
Yeah.
And to me, it's just what we do, right? Like, I don't care about I love my Mill Creek supervisor, right? But like, my Mill Creek supervisor doesn't matter to me that much. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm like, my vote is so important. Like, I agree with what they say. I'm going to vote for him.
You don't need a prayer circle the night before?
I don't need a prayer circle for him. There's no purity test. It's the same with like county coroner, right? Mm-hmm. You vote for that. I don't care. I'm going to go vote. That's what I do. I don't understand why it's so hard for people to get off the couch and say, you know what? I'm going to vote for my political party because I agree with them 95% of the time, or I agree with them 80% of the time. I've done a cost analysis or a breakdown of the political parties.
Right.
I'm always going to vote for the Democrats in their current form.
Yeah.
Because I agree with over 50% of what they say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard for everyone else to get on board with that.
But I think beyond getting off the couch, it's so much worse than that, because there are people who are actively antagonistic. And even you're talking about winter and summer, and it's interesting you mentioned John Kerry, because I want to talk about that in a second.
Sure.
But you're talking about winter and summertime soldiers. The difference between the Biden versus Trump election and the Harris versus Trump election
It's
last
crazy.
year is insane.
Yeah.
They're like the thing that I will scream until I'm dead. There is no reason that Joe Biden was not leading Donald Trump in the polls by 10 points. Like
he actually was.
In an intelligent, he was not.
He was.
Not last year.
Oh, in 2020.
In 2024.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
There's no reason that as it turns out, I'm not Trump is actually an okay strategy. And it should have been an acceptable one because, man, the risks were clear. But the reason that I think it's interesting you brought up John Kerry is to pivot to another topic is everyone's acting as though the Democratic Party's dead as a result of last year. It's certainly a setback. We haven't lost the popular vote since so it's really since 2004, which is what I want to talk about. But I consider like since 1988 because 2000 was a fluke and we won the popular vote and then like Bush got reelected, but it's like he wouldn't have been reelected because he wouldn't have been there to reelect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that.
We have had the mandate of the voters since
For years.
Essentially since 1988.
Since 1992, I would say.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, 92.
Yeah,
Sorry. With Clinton. We lost the popular vote very, 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 very narrowly.
Yeah.
Because people sat out. We did not experience a rightward lurch. We did in voting results, but not in attitudes.
Yeah.
To me, this election, 2024, is 2004, not 1980.
Yeah.
And we saw what happened in 2004. The party, John Kerry just narrowly lost. It was fucking Ohio. Because, I mean, he won the Rust Belt. What was the electoral count? Literally, if John Kerry won Ohio, that was the deciding state. It was
it was 286 to 2 something.
It was literally down to one state. Ohio decided the election.
It was one state.
It was not a situation
or
where
New Mexico.
Yeah, where all the swing states went one way or the other. Ohio used to be the bellwether. And then we saw what happened with 2006 and 2008. We're at the very beginning of Trump's term here. Do you agree with my analysis who do I think I am? But do you agree with my belief that like this is a setback? We don't feel good about what happened last year and we shouldn't be complacent about it, but we also need to stop with this like it's all over. The Democrats are never going to win another election again.
Yeah, I totally disagree with that. Yeah, I totally disagree with that narrative where it's like it's over. We never we just should surrender or whatever. This stuff, the thing that other people don't realize is this goes in a cycle, right?
Yes.
So, and let me just clarify one last thing. So, before this, what I was saying about like I just go and vote, right?
Yeah.
There's people who are not like me, who they actively choose not to vote because, I don't like her position on this.
I don't trust the government.
I'm talking about Kamala Harris. Like, I'm not voting for Kamala Harris because of her position on this or that. And there was issues that I disagree with Kamala, and you know them. Like, there's things I disagree with Kamala Harris on.
Right.
It didn't stop me from voting for her.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's okay to have a different view.
Yeah.
But going back to that, so a lot of these things move in cycles, and yeah. The cards were stacked against the Democrats, in my opinion, in 2024, and they did the best they could, in my opinion.
And Harris saved the party. We've talked about this too.
Yeah, I totally agree. So if you had Joe Biden on the top of and I love Joe Biden. So
I love
don't
Joe
get
Biden
me wrong.
too.
So this is not bashing on him, but their internal polls had him like losing New Jersey, New Mexico, Virginia. Like he was not popular. If you talk to young men who are my age, who like my friends, I'll be like, oh yeah, I love Joe Biden. They're like, you do? He's so old. So like people did not like him, right? And she was attached to the brand of him.
Yeah.
And that's true. And that's okay. But she did, in all the states that she spent money on, it was an extremely competitive race.
Yep.
Right? So, yeah, of course we lost Montana's Senate seat. Of course we lost West Virginia's Senate seat.
Right.
Pennsylvania was a fluke. And it was a very, like...
Pennsylvania overall is trending left due to suburban Pennsylvania,
Right.
and we lost last year because the tide was just too strong.
Yeah, and Senator McCormick won by like not even half a point.
Like 15,000 votes or
Yeah,
something.
so like it was a very narrow win,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't like this landslide. And that's the thing that people need to realize is that these things ebb and flow. But if you look at 2004 is a perfect example, perfect analogy. You had John Kerry who, a lot of people didn't like John Kerry, fun fact. Like, he was not a popular nominee. He did win, like, Hitlerville, Florida, though.
Oh, good.
So, like, he won, like, a bunch of, like, places that you'd be like, a Democrat won there? But in 2006 we win, 2008 we win, but then we get blown out in 2010. So that's kind of how things go, because we don't have a population that pays attention to what's happening.
They react.
It's a very reactionary time and very reactionary society.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. So they reacted to Joe Biden's inflation, or quote unquote Joe Biden's inflation, the border crisis with quotes around that.
Yeah.
That's why they voted for Trump, right? And our base did
Or
stay
sat
home.
out. Yes.
Or sat out, right? That's a real thing. So I think we're going to be okay in the future if we have elections, and that's just a joke. But sometimes it's serious.
I think the voter suppression tactics that are being weaponized are very severe, and I am concerned.
Well, and so that's where I think you and I disagree on some things. Like, I think the Democrats could. I think we can message better on that, where it's like. And that goes into a different conversation, but like I get your point though. I mean, there's some tactics being employed, and that's been their playbook forever. And it used to be the Democrats' playbook in the Deep South, right? So the Conservative Party always does that. They always try to conserve the vote to only their base, right?
Right, but that's when white men started fleeing the Democratic Party, is because we embraced civil rights. But to your point about it being cyclical, is again. This happened in 2004. Bush took his narrow win as a mandate.
Well, that happened in 2000, so I will correct you on that one. So when he got reelected in 2004, his second term was a train wreck. He couldn't get anything passed through the Republican. So there is a difference, I will say. So he could.
I'm sorry. Did I say 2004? I meant 2000.
Yeah, 2000 they rammed through all types of things.
That's where the mandate joke came from.
Yes, he had a huge mandate, quote unquote, and he passed his tax cut, No Child Left Behind, invaded Iraq on a credit card, by the way, gutted Social Security, gutted Medicare, paid for the Iraq War with Social Security money, and that's real. In 2004, so the difference is. In 2004, he actually moderated, which a lot of people will disagree with me on that. And he's like, let's reform Social Security. And he had a plan. I don't agree with the plan, but it honestly was a plan, right?
Yeah.
That was like a real plan. And he was like, here it is. And it was to privatize Social Security. But at least it was a plan, right? The Republicans shot it down. Then he was like, I want to send more troops to Iraq to stabilize the country, which is called the surge. The Republicans tried to shoot it down, but Democrats joined in with the other Republicans, and they passed that to send more troops to Iraq, because they invaded Iraq with no men, by the way.
Yeah.
That's why it was a train wreck.
Yeah.
So he had opposition from the legislature, and I'm curious to see with this round with Trump if they're going to continually be lockstep with him, or if they're going to grow a spine with him. And they won't, but I'm curious.
Yeah. But I think the mandate piece here is where is their Achilles heel. They win the popular vote by 1.5% ish, and not 50% of the country is Trump's margin. Is what I'm saying. Trump doesn't have the mandate of the people. Trump narrowly squeaked by.
The Congress doesn't either. They have a very narrow majority. The Senate has a bigger majority, and that's just due literally to math.
Right.
That's just it. If you look at the House of Representatives, which I will push back a little bit, for the most part, our districts, other than North Carolina, Illinois, and Texas, and Florida, they're pretty fair. The districts are the fairest they've been in quite some time. So you can see how evenly divided our country is by the amount. If the districts were actually truly fair, the Democrats would have a majority right now because of North Carolina and Texas, just because of the population.
Yeah.
You can see that they have a 3-seat majority, which is showing them that it's very evenly split, and they do not have a mandate to go past their giant tax cut, which they're going to try to do. And I'm wondering if there's going to be some heroes in the Republican caucus who block that.
I'd say probably not.
Probably not, but there is a couple of the hardliners who are like, if it adds to the debt, we won't vote for it, and it does add to the debt.
Okay. So on that topic, with the mandate quote,
of heaven.
Mandate. I mean, we kind of talked about 26 and 2028. Who do you have I think I have a couple questions. Who do we think are meeting the moment right now in terms of our leadership? What are the races to watch next year? Because I think if we ever want to see a 2008 like map again.
Yeah.
We not only have to defend Ossoff in Georgia
Yes.
and Peters' seat in Michigan.
Michigan, yep.
We have to expand the map to Maine,
North
Carolina, and then if we really want to reach here, maybe Iowa.
Maybe Iowa.
Probably not
Probably
Iowa.
not.
Probably not.
Could be, though.
Probably not Texas this time.
So yeah, let me answer that question where like what are we looking for?
Yeah.
I'll start with Texas. So the issue with Texas is that we're gaining in the suburbs, but we're losing the rural Latino votes, and they're offsetting each other. So it's sliding back to pre-Trump levels of conservative Texas. So the Rio Grande, there's not a lot of people down there, but the people who are there voted by Assad margins for Democrats back in the day, and now they're slipping pretty hard right as we're happening. So in Texas, I don't think it'll come into play. There is a opportunity for the Senate race to come into play if Ken Paxton, who's the Attorney General, successfully primaries John Cornyn, who's the incumbent.
Sure.
He's a lunatic.
Yeah.
And the Republican House of Representatives down there impeached him. So there is a slight avenue to win that Texas seat.
Yeah.
In Iowa, I don't see it happening.
I don't either.
Rob Sand, who's the state auditor, he's the only elected statewide Democrat in Iowa. He is a populist young man, like 40. He's not our type of Democrat. He's not conservative. He's actually left. He's so left that he sounds conservative.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Sure does.
He could make. Well, he's not like a left like Bernie, bro, or at DSA. He's like left in the economic sense.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it right. He's a nice guy. He used to follow me on Twitter, back when I had Twitter. He could run for Senate or governor, and he will be competitive, no matter whoever they nominate. I don't know who it will be. He could be competitive. In Nebraska, Dan Osborne is running again against Jim Ricketts, who is the former governor. Dan Osborne could be competitive too. The goal for him is he won the two congressional districts, the Omaha-based one and the Lincoln-based one.
Yeah.
He lost the rural swath one. If he can do better in the rural swath one than he did in 24, the independent could win that, and I think he would caucus with the Democrats. In Maine, we have to be very careful.
I think Maine, North Carolina, and Alaska are the ones that I have my eye on.
So Maine, if we nominate just a normal Democrat who is nice and they don't do the 2020 model of literally blanketing the state with advertisements. Do you remember reading those New York Times stories where they're like, oh, here we go, another ad for... It actually turned people off.
Yeah.
So you have to run a discipline race. It could be Jared Golden. It could be Janet Mills. She's a little old. It could be there's a couple of people there who could be really good candidates.
Yeah.
In North Carolina, you have two great candidates who are going to run, Roy Cooper
and Wiley Nickel.
Wiley Nickel. They're both great candidates. I think Roy Cooper will win that primary pretty convincingly. I think he will win that seat if he is the nominee.
Sure.
And then I think in Alaska,
Mary Peltola.
I heard she's running for U.S. House again, which I don't know why she would do that. But she might run for U.S. House or she might run for Senate. That will be competitive. I don't know if she can pull it off. Her loss was devastating to me because she was the most...
pro-fish House of
She was the most pro-fishing House of Representative member ever. That's an inside joke about her campaign. She always talked about salmon. A rough year last year too. She wasn't on her game. Her husband passed away during the campaign. She was flying back and forth from Washington to Alaska like every other day.
Yeah.
Like it's a hard job being one from the the former territories.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she could be competitive. That's the Senate side. I'm pretty bullish on Kansas. That's my hot take.
I can't agree.
The Senate race.
Can't agree.
But
why?
If we get a really good recruit in the Senate race in Kansas, I think we could have a really strong showing there.
Is Kansas trending left?
Yes.
Really?
Yep.
Why?
Because of Topeka, Wichita, and Kansas City.
Wichita.
So they're all liberal leaning. I think that's one of the states that Harris actually did better than Biden in. If I don't recall, it could be competitive.
Okay,
that's a far shot. Here's the thing: make it competitive. It's possible. That's the 2006 model.
Yeah.
You have to go everywhere. House races, all the state, I'm not going to go through them because I don't want to bore you.
Right.
All of the congressional seats that were won by less than 5 points, which I think there are like 15 of them, and then all the seats that are less than 10 points, they're all in play, and I think they'll all go to the Democrats.
Okay. Interesting.
So I think Democrats are on track to win about 30 to 40 seats in the House, and I think they'll win at least 2 seats in the Senate.
But not if David Hogg has his way.
Oh, no. David Hogg.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I largely agree with that analysis. It's interesting about Kansas. And then House seats, obviously, people pay even less attention to those than they do Senate
They don't
seats.
even know who's their incumbent House member is.
Yeah.
But there's some in Iowa, there's some in California, there's some in New York.
Yeah.
There's 3 in Pennsylvania that will be competitive, nowhere near us.
Yeah.
On the other side of the state. There's going to be tons in there's a couple that could be competitive in the South because of just the new lines. And then there's a couple who will be competitive in the Midwest as well. So Michigan, Minnesota, and...
Did you just say Minnesota?
Minnesota. And
we're from Wisconsin. Leave us alone.
And Wisconsin has probably 2 to 3 competitive seats.
Well, if that Supreme Court race pans out and we end up redrawing the map, that would be amazing. How about governorships? Because I think Josh Shapiro is on track to win handsomely here in Pennsylvania.
He's going to win by sod margins.
We'll see what happens in Michigan.
I think so. Michigan has a liberal independent.
I wonder if he'll drop.
I hope he drops.
I hope he drops too.
If he drops, they'll win that. So I think the Democrats will win every contested that's in a so everywhere that we have an incumbent will win. Arizona is a question mark.
Katie Hobbs.
Because of Katie Hobbs.
Which, you know what? Katie Hobbs deserves better.
Yeah, but she might win. She might not. She barely won against Carrie Lake. So that's something you just need to look out for. And then Kansas, the Democratic incumbent is up, and she can't run again. Laura Kelly.
Yeah.
Her lieutenant is running. I don't know if he can pull it off, but he might be.
How did Laura Kelly win in the first place? Was that...
no, she won just on her own. Oh, in 2018.
Was that 2018? That was...
She
okay.
had a spoiler for the Republicans.
Got it.
And then in 2022, she won on her own.
Those were both good years for Democrats, though. Next year should be a good year for Democrats, theoretically, but we'll see. I'm curious about Georgia because I know that we have, I think, Lucy McBath is running.
Lucy McBath, Jason Carter, and a couple other state senators are wanting to run.
Okay. And we have a Senate seat on the marquee there as well.
If Brian Kemp runs in that seat, it will be very competitive.
It'll be competitive, but I think Ossoff will end up pulling it off.
Most likely.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, and then I'm also, one that I'm very, so there's 2 that I'm really curious about from a governor standpoint.
Yeah.
The first is New York, because Kathy Hochul is not especially popular, but I'm curious to see. I know people like Richie Torres are rumored to be running. I'm interested to see what happens in New York because the state itself, again, people didn't show up last year, so it felt redder than it should.
There was some dramatic swings, though. We have to admit that.
I think the state of New York is not as liberal as people think it is.
Yeah,
I think it is a normie Dem
area,
a normie Dem state, just like the city of New York,
right?
Where I think we're going to see Andrew Cuomo become the mayor.
Yep.
Like it or not, but I'm curious.
It's Andrew Cuomo versus a literal guy who's like, I am a socialist.
Yeah.
So
and New York City is not.
New York City has Wall Street in it, guys.
Yeah.
And it has 56,000 police officers.
Yeah.
It's not a liberal paradise.
It's not. It is a very liberal place, but it's not what people think it is.
Right.
And so I'm curious to see if Hochul, runs again. I think she will, but I think she'll be primaried, and I'm curious to see if she can overcome that primary. Do we think we're in danger of losing that seat?
No. Not in 20. So if
Harris had won, potentially.
If it's going to be competitive again, in my opinion, if it's Kathy Hochul.
Yeah.
People just really don't like her.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. You can have that opinion.
I'm not particularly fond of her, but I would vote for her.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Again, that's the thing. That's the difference between me, you, and some other people where, I'm going to vote for a dead dog over...
a MAGA Republican. Or a normal Republican for... Yeah, I'm not going to vote. Yeah.
There's certain exceptions for me, but yeah. So... if she's the nominee, it'll be competitive. However, if you nominate someone like Richie Torres or you nominate someone like Pat Ryan or even Antonio Delgado, the lieutenant governor, I think they can pull it off. I think it's pretty I think it would be a 10 to 15 point win for them.
Sure.
The days of 65-35 in New York are probably over.
For a while, at least.
For quite some time.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious about New York. The other one, I'm about to open this whole other can of worms. Oh, no. Very, very curious about California because there's a lot of talk about Harris.
I want Harris to run.
I want Harris to run too. I've said on this podcast that I would be open to her running for president again. There's some things that she would have to check off, I think, to be the de facto nominee coming into the presidential race. But I think California, and I'm going to do a full episode on whether she should run and why and what we hope to see accomplished. But I'm curious to see what happens there because there was a poll recently done, I think by Emerson, which is not a pollster that I take altogether that seriously. And yet it said 50% of California voters, Democratic voters, said she should not run. 50% said she should. And yet she led that poll among likely contenders for the nomination. I think she's going to have national baggage. And I'm just curious. I'm wondering if her name ID and her popularity, her relative popularity among the Democratic Party would give her a boost, or if people are going to say it's too soon. We didn't elect you president. We're not going to show up and support you for governor.
It's a really slippery slope because if she loses that primary, it's over, in my opinion.
And by it's over, we mean her career.
Yeah, her career is over for her. Here's my thing, and I've told you this before. I want to move on from the Obama-Biden legacy, right? It's nationally. So, like, I'm fine with, an ambassador for here running for U.S. House. I don't care about that. I'm talking about, like, president and things like that. So if she wants to run for governor, I think it's a perfect capstone on her career. She can implement, like you said, she can implement things that she said she was running on.
I think and
that would be great. And it's a perfect capstone. Governor, to me, is the sexiest job in government. Like, you are the person. You represent that state, and you go out and you're out there.
Yeah.
I think she should be the governor of California. I think she represents what California is. I think she has some plans that she could get through. They have a supermajority in both chambers. She could get through a lot of what she wants to get done.
Do you think that if she were to run for California governor, she would win commandingly enough that she would the boats of everybody else running down ballot would be lifted by her tide? Or do you think she would face headwinds that maybe took some of that away?
I think she would win 60-40 again.
Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
I think the people know who she is. They know what she does, and I think whoever's going to vote is going to vote, and I don't think it really matters who's running for governor in California. If
not Harris, who do you have your eye
on? Not Katie Porter.
Yeah, I agree.
She's a do something, but the current lieutenant governor, I think, is, and I know people roll over when I say this, but I think she's owed it. I think she stood alongside Gavin Newsom and has been really good. And I cannot pronounce her name. It's Greek, so that's why I'm not saying her name.
Okay.
It's like Koloopoulos or something like that. She's really good. I don't support Katie Porter for it. I think Katie Porter is just running because she wants to be relevant. She should have stayed in her House seat if she wanted to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's where I see it. If it's not Harris, I want it to be the current lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
I think Newsom's done a good job.
I think Newsom has overall done a good job. I think right now, though, he is I think people like Newsom and Fetterman reacted to the Trump win too soon. And I think that they...
So I agree with you on Fetterman. With Newsom, what he's doing with his podcast, I say more power to you. Interview Steve Bannon. The one thing I would say that I listen to every episode because I'm a nerd. He should be pushing back a little bit harder on some of these lunatics he's bringing on.
Yeah. Or a lot harder.
Well, let them air him out, but I think his goal is that
they're
so crazy that people are like, oh, that's crazy. But I think he's missing the point that he needs to be like, no, you're wrong on a couple things.
I mean, these people get enough free press from Fox and from the mainstream media sources, which are lurching rightward at an alarming rate.
Yeah, I agree.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens in 2028. But I'm curious to see if he ends up being this inevitable force because this is I think
he's the Tom Steyer of.
I could see it
where he's gonna start running, and I think he's gonna lead some polls. I just don't see I don't think he has legs because I really like him actually.
Yeah.
Anytime I listen to an interview with him that's not his podcast, I really enjoy what he has to say. He's the governor of California.
He's a great messenger.
And he's going to have some problems because he does have a supermajority in both chambers. So when he's saying he wants to do things and he hasn't done them, it's a very easy attack.
Yeah.
So
I think I want to wrap this up with, and we haven't talked a whole lot about Trump's first 100 days, but this is all kind of in response to it.
it's all part of it.
I kind of want to wrap up with a look at 2028, which I'm going to do a whole episode, and I'd love to have you on to talk about that.
Yeah.
So for 2028, there's a lot of polling being done right now, and it's all hypothetical. You have, and the most common names that you're seeing atop these lists of people are Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg. After Cory Booker's speech, he rocketed up to the double digits. What surprises me is how far down the list Josh Shapiro is. You see,
people don't know who Josh Shapiro is.
they don't, but they will. Gretchen Whitmer is on these lists, polling in the single digits. AOC is polling in the single digits. Gavin Newsom is often polling in the single digits. Wes Moore is polling in the single digits. So
people don't know who Wes Moore
you don't know,
is.
People don't know who these people are. But if not for some total unknown dark horse coming out of whatever state in the country and kind of taking the world by storm, a la Obama, I'm curious what you think, because let's take Harris out of it for a minute. If we're going to start completely over and these polls are to be taken literally right now, Pete Buttigieg is on top of these lists, many of them. Pete Buttigieg is incredibly well-spoken. He goes on Fox News all the time. He's from the middle of the country. He lives in Michigan now. He's from Indiana. There are many things about him that I think check the box of what a leader should be. He's a gay man.
Yep.
We live in a country that 70% of us, support gay marriage. But I think a lot of people, I think that's the low-hanging, no pun intended, fruit. And I can say that. But gay marriage is the low-hanging fruit, that is to say. There's a lot of people who don't get it or who are uncomfortable with it in other scenarios. What do you think about that? Do you think that he, if nominated, could win the Rust Belt? Do you think that, because you have somebody like Harris?
If nominated, I think he would be a great nominee. I'm not sure if he's on the top of my list for that. I really think he missed an opportunity to run for Senate or governor in Michigan. I really think he would have won. I really genuinely. I'm also digging his beard recently. I don't know if you've seen the beard, which I don't know what that's about, to be completely honest. I feel like he's trying to address maybe some things that you just mentioned, where he's trying to
appear more masculine, perhaps.
I think so.
Which is so sad that that's a thing.
I'm totally with you. Totally with you. I think he's great. I don't know if he's the best candidate. I thought maybe 2020 would be the best time for him to roll up, where he was Mayor Pete. Now he's connected to the
Biden
infrastructure. He's great. I really like him. I don't want it to be Kamala Harris. I like Kamala Harris. I voted for Kamala Harris. I've no qualms with Kamala Harris that I say publicly. She's great. I want to move on. Dark horses, I do think Shapiro is going to come out and people are going to be like, he's
gay too?
No. But I think he's going to come out and be like, hey, I'm running for president. People are going to be like, he's a good messenger. I think he has some things against him that some people in our party don't enjoy.
And to be clear, I want to put it out in the open. I don't know if we're talking about the same thing here. Josh Shapiro is
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Damn it. Josh Shapiro is a Jewish man.
Yeah, he's practicing Jewish person.
When I hear that, I don't even bat an eye. Go ahead. Go for it. I support it. Absolutely, let's elect a Jewish man to the presidency.
I'm totally
But
on
I'm
board.
like, there are people who are still, and it's a lot of our far lefties who...
and that's where I think there should be some sister soldiering.
I fully agree. I just said that on Instagram the other day.
I think we need to just be like, and this, I think we disagree on this, where I think, I'm for universal healthcare. I've changed that position. I think we should have that.
Yeah.
We need to have a plan for it that's real, not just saying it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even about the policy agenda, right?
Right.
It's about the way they conduct themselves. And I think
Agreed.
we need to be like,
there's no place for anti-Semitism.
So I think we need to say to the far left, hey, we're not going to listen to you because you're being unserious.
Yes.
And then you're anti-Semitic. And it's not even about the war in Gaza, right? It's literally just they don't like Jewish people because they have a certain connotation, which is anti-Semitic. And I've said this for years, and I'm going to just say it out loud.
Sure.
They think all it's the stereotypical, the Nazi propaganda. Jewish people are rich people who live in nice houses, who drive nice cars, and they're upset with them because it's a class warfare thing. They think that they're the bourgeoisie, right?
Yep.
That's not it. But they hate them because
fully
of
anti-Semitic,
that. Right. It's just because of who they are.
Yep.
And it's a joke to them, but it's real. It has nothing to do with Israel. It has nothing to do with, you can criticize the war.
Israel made it worse.
Well, yes, Israel brought it out.
The Israel conflict, I should say.
The war brought it out. But I think Josh is going to face some of that. I really like Josh. He's our governor. Voted for him, of course. Voted for him
For Attorney General.
twice. Yeah. So I voted for him 3 times. He's great. I think he could be great. I think Wes Moore. Have you seen the football video of Wes Moore?
Oh my God, Grant.
So Wes Moore could be really something. So we're always talking about how we're losing men. Wes Moore is, pardon my French, he's a daddy. He's so cool. So he's yoked. He's absolutely shredded. This guy spends hours in the gym. So there's a video of him playing football with the Baltimore something.
Is it Ravens?
Maybe, yeah. And he's like, hi, I'm Governor Wes Moore. And then he starts clapping. He goes, all right, let's go, boys. And then he is tackling people. And it's like, it's not fake. Like, it's real.
Yeah.
He's actually tackling them.
Yeah.
And he's an Army veteran, very well-spoken, very handsome, I must say. And he is progressive. He has the inspirational, talking vision, but he's not impersonating anyone.
You have a gay man, a Jewish man, a black man, and a lot of people, a black man from a safe blue state, by the way. But a lot of people are going to hear this and go, here we go again.
I don't think there's anything wrong with running a man. I'm not trying.
No. I don't think there's anything wrong with running a man either. I think a lot of people are going to say it needs to be a white, straight Christian man from.
Oh no, so
Middle
I
America,
disagree with that.
Like Andy Bashir.
No, so I didn't get to Andy Bashir. So Andy Bashir, I think, would be a great candidate. I think Andy Bashir needs some serious media training.
I think Andy Bashir would be a great president. I don't know about candidate.
Pardon me. You're right. Yes, he would be a great president. He needs some serious media training.
Agreed.
On how to
excite people.
Well, how to excite people, and then how to. He sounds a little too scripted, right? He sounds like he's reading off a teleprompter. I really like him.
Yeah.
And it might be his accent, genuinely. And he has a very unique Southern Kentucky accent.
Yeah.
Where he articulates things like this, and that could be why I'm thinking that. He would be great too. He has a record. He's very proud of his record, and he comes from a very red state, very red.
And he's a pretty normal Democrat despite that.
Well, so when he ran in 2019, he ran a little more conservative than he did in 2023. And he, those will come up in a primary, what he said in 2019. But he's good. I think he'd be a great candidate. The thing that I don't want to happen in 2028, and I want to hear your thoughts on it because I feel like I'm yapping, is I don't want a replay of 2020
Neither
where
do I.
everyone and their mom runs
and goes as left as possible
and has the race to the left. And here's the thing. I think we're all pretty left, right? I think every Democrat that I just listed is left, right? Center of left.
Is a normie left Democrat.
Right. Normal, pretty boring, if I must say, in a good way. We don't need to have the debates, the circus debates that we had in 2020. We don't need to do the hand raising for healthcare for illegal immigrants. You know what I mean? We don't. And again, you can have that opinion. It's just not popular. We don't need to have that. I think we need to have 8 candidates, all of whom are governors. I do not want a single federal person running, which I know that's not going to happen.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you're saying that because, so first of all, we've named 4 dudes.
Yeah.
Is there, and I think we'll talk about this in another episode, but I'm curious to see, the thing that I keep saying is, Hillary Clinton ran on the heels of a two terms of Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Was hated for all the wrong reasons, just barely lost. Kamala Harris ran on the heels of a unfairly popular Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. Is a black woman, just barely lost.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone kind of sees that and they go, okay, we're never going to elect a woman president. I don't think that's true.
No, I think we could run a woman, but who would it be?
Gretchen Whitmer.
So Well, so let me go back on something. So when Joe Biden was like, I'm going to pick a woman, and then he was like, I'm going to pick a woman of color, right? Who was he going to pick? There was literally like 5 people he could have picked, and he picked Kamala Harris, right? It's kind of the same question with women.
Well,
Yeah.
he was going to pick Amy Klobuchar.
Well,
And then the Black Lives Matter protests happened. And
so that's where he should have picked Amy Klobuchar going back, if you ask me. So I know that's like unpopular to say.
I would disagree just because I think Amy Klobuchar is incredibly fragile. That debate with Pete. That debate with Pete was embarrassing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember watching that going, how on earth is she going to handle Donald Trump if she can't handle Pete Buttigieg? But like, I'm thinking of
so
like...
we have Gretchen Whitmer. Who else is there? We'll have Abigail Spanberger at that time.
Potentially.
She'd be great.
Potentially.
But should we first... Well, they only have 1 term. But
yeah.
So go ahead, yeah.
I'm just curious. I mean, like federal people, like I'm thinking of John Ossoff in
Papa.
He needs to get through next year. And then he'd have to announce pretty quickly if he was going to run.
He's got to work out some things with himself. He's kind of a backbencher.
He is a bit of a backbencher. But he's young and he has good energy. He's likable.
I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Ruben Gallego.
I disagree with
Border
Ruben.
state, Latino.
Freshman senator, has a very far left record.
Like Obama.
Well, what do you think of Alyssa Slotkin?
I like Alyssa Slotkin.
I heard this for the first time, and I never really have thought about it. And I was like, wow,
I don't know that she's a presidential contender in 28.
I don't know. I think I could see it.
We'll see. I don't know. The point of me bringing all these people up is, and I want to talk in depth about each of their records in another episode. But
yeah.
I think we have a solid bench. I think we have a bench that we did not have in 2023 when Joe Biden announced his reelection. His reelection campaign. A lot of these people were not in a position to run for president.
Yes, they were just starting their second terms.
Yes. I think everybody in the Democratic Party, of the voters, is going to have to, with any of these people, compromise on something. That's what I'm not sure.
Goal. Right. And so I'll say this, and I was telling my friend the other day this. We, right now, currently, thanks to Trump, and this is the only thing I'll give him credit for, we have the strongest Democratic bench I think we've ever had. Like, we have really good people in our party. And the thing that people don't... So I'm tired of all the Dem bashing. So I'm coming on here because I know that this is a good outlet for this. We have great people in our party. And that includes, like, people I disagree with. I still think they're great people.
Yeah.
We have fantastic governors.
Yep.
We have fantastic... senators, we have fantastic House of Representative members. What other party is it where you have someone like Jared Golden and Marie Gluskamp Perez, and you have AOC in one party, right? Those are conservative Democrats representing Republican districts, and then you have Abigail Spanberger running for governor, fantastic candidate. And then she'll be a great governor. Then you have people like Josh Shapiro. You have J.B. Pritzker, who's a billionaire, who's a great guy.
His name didn't come up on that list, but I think he's on that list.
He wants to be on that list.
Yeah.
And then you have all types of great. We don't really have a weak. I think we have 2 weak governors, and I won't say who they are.
Hochul and Hobbs.
3 weak governors. So we have Tina Kotek in Oregon.
Okay.
We have. Hobbs, unfortunately.
I think Hobbs is unduly unpopular.
I agree.
I think she's a good person. I think she's done a good job.
I think the more I see of her, the more I like. And then, of course, Hochul. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but, it's gonna be a long 4 years.
It's gonna be a very long 4 years, and our party, the voters that make up our party, especially because I'm tired of hearing about elected Democrats. The people who make up our party are the people who put those people there.
Yep.
The people who make up our party and who are adjacent enough to our party that they fall in with us when it comes to elections are the ones who will get us out of this.
And just my last point about this is just look at who we have on our bench, right? Like, let's do a comparison.
No magical candidate is going to arise.
No, and you're foolish if you think there is. And
in my opinion, you're also foolish if you think, maybe I'll be proven wrong in 4 years. You're also foolish if you think that a House of Representatives member from one of the most liberal districts in the country, AOC, is going to run for president and win.
Well, that's another whole conversation topic, and
I
that's
like
kind
her.
of what we were
I'm
talking
fine
about
with her.
earlier, where she's going on a tour with Bernie, and they are acting like they are rock stars, and it's something that, like, I don't like. I don't like the what do you call it? Like the celebrity. So it's the thing that they always criticize, right? So,
Right.
But like, I don't like the celebrity
aspect of politics.
These people are here to work, right? So like Josh Shapiro is a prosecutor who prosecuted the Catholic Church for molesting boys, right?
Yeah.
That's tough. You know what I mean? That's like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
She's a bartender, right?
Yeah.
I respect that. Hell yeah, right?
And she has great ideas.
She's great ideas. But my point is,
Mostly.
mostly. But like you have people like Andy Bashir, prosecute death penalty cases, like badass. You have Tony Evers, the curriculum and instruction master of Wisconsin. You have Tim Walz, Master Sergeant in the U.S. Army. You have really quality people.
What's
in our
really
party.
interesting about what you're talking about right now
Yeah.
is you're talking about all these people, and it's men, and you have men and women, and somebody like Kamala Harris, who there's the
I'm getting there.
No, but
Yeah,
there's the double standard of she's a woman, and you have a badass prosecutor.
She's a badass prosecutor.
And yet,
that was what I liked about her.
She's wearing expensive earrings.
Yeah.
She's got makeup on. She's got to wear a pretty outfit so that she doesn't get critiqued for her appearance.
Yeah, totally.
Whereas these dudes can,
and that's sexism.
show up in a suit.
And that's sexism.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she's a great candidate. Like, the thing that I liked about her is what people didn't like about her. I was like, she's a tough on crime. She's a prosecutor. She's going to go after people who are hurting
She's
people.
tough on crime, but she was compassionate on crime.
She's
too.
fair.
She reformed the system in California.
Right. She's fair.
Yeah.
And we have a great bench. And what I'm saying is, what I don't like about AOC coming from a D+1,000 district and rallying with Bernie Sanders is it does feel like Coachella. And the thing with me is, like, these people are here to work. We're paid for that. We pay for them.
Yeah.
This is my populism, I guess, coming out. They're not celebrities.
Yeah.
Like, they are there to work. And like, I don't like that everyone's like, well, they need to go on this podcast and then they need to go on this show and act relatable. Like, no, they're there. And I think we agree on that.
We
like,
do.
These people are not like,
I don't care about relatability.
No, but they're not our buddies.
Right.
Like, they're there to get things done to help our lives get better. They're not there to be memeable or like, and like going to John Fetterman. Like, I don't care that he wears shorts because that's not relatable to me. He's there to represent me. I want him wearing a suit, right? I want people who are serious about getting the job done. And I don't like these rallies where AOC runs out, she's jumping around like she's Led Zeppelin. Like, it's a little too much for me. So that's the thing where it's like, if we're going to do it, we need to be very serious. We can still have rallies. I think the Kamala Harris rally here in Erie was great. She walked out. There was music, of course. It's to make you feel something.
That rally was
But she
fun.
walked out, she waved, she goes, here's my agenda, and then she walked out.
And you know what? Talking about that agenda, I message discipline. Talking points. I mean, one of my criticisms of her in my episode where I said, where did she go wrong, was that she was very memorized and she had things that she also had 100 days. But she,
Right.
You come on stage, she talked for probably half an hour. She
If
went
that.
through, and it's like all of the rallies were more or less the same. I watched every single one of them. More or less the same. A lot of repetition.
Yeah.
That's called message discipline. And now it's different when you're in an age where everything's live streamed and everything's on the internet, so everyone can watch it over and over and over again in different cities or whatever. But you're going to various parts of the country, and she talked policy.
Well, and that's the thing where it's an old Bill Clinton saying, if you can't talk about what you want to do for the American people on a note card, you're not going to be able to get it across. So, and that's not a criticism of her, but like,
To me, that's a criticism of the American people.
well, it is. But the thing that bothered me the most is that, like, with Kamala Harris, and I know we disagree on this, is when someone would ask her a controversial question, she wouldn't go back and forth on it. She would kind of dance around it. So,
well,
like,
I would largely agree with that. But tying it to 2028,
they just need to say, here's what we support, here's what we want to do. So don't tell me about affordable housing. Tell me how you're actually going to get it done. You know what I mean? If you want affordable housing, tell me how you're going to get it done. And just be visionary about it. If you want universal health care, which I want universal health care, you have to tell the people why and how it's going to be paid for.
What I was going to say is I feel like one of the offenses of the 2024 election was that we are trying so hard to straddle as wide a swath of the population on every single issue. And we are a big tent party, and we should be.
Yeah.
But the language, I
totally agree.
To your point of like, just say what you think. There will be people who don't agree with you, but they'll respect you for
that's what I'm saying.
And
And honestly, it's been my last, like, I respect someone, and like I just was having this conversation a couple of nights ago with a guy who was very left, like he identifies as socialist, and he said what he thought, and I said, you know what, I disagree with everything you just said, but I'm glad you at least said it, because at least you're willing to put your money where your mouth is. So like if you're a socialist, I'm going to respect you more if you're just outright and you're like, yeah, that's what I am. And if you're a centrist, yeah, that's what I am. If you're pro-life, that's what I am. But like I wish people could give a solid answer on some of these issues. So like if they want to ban abortion, if they don't, like the question in the debates, I watched all the congressional debates, they would always be like, what's your limit? And the Democrats would be like, oh, what Roe v. Wade is. And you're like, what's the limit? And then they would be like, well, what Roe v. Wade was, which is like, I think 22 weeks. So just say 22 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that.
I just want more direct. I feel like the American people have to be talked to very directly, because it's just no longer, you can't have a big, if you watch debates from the 80s or 90s for Senate, House, whatever, like you don't hear them talking about tax rates. Like Kamala Harris and it's not a criticism of her, Kamala Harris and Trump in their one debate, I don't think talked about the marginal income tax rate or the corporate tax rate. But they can't.
She didn't really get a chance to.
No, she didn't get. No, but what I'm saying is like they don't talk about that.
Right.
Like they don't talk about things that actually matter. Like because the media, and this is where we go into other things, but the media is obsessed with other things.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think I'm going to wrap this up.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't know what this will be edited into, but we've been sitting here for about 2 hours.
Yeah.
This is what our phone calls are like, everybody.
Yep.
But Grant will be on this podcast, I think, a lot more.
Yeah.
As we delve further and further into the hellscape in which we are living. There are so many topics that we covered on this that I want to excavate more and more.
Yeah.
Much more thoroughly. In future
This is just
episodes.
a little primer for your favorite guests that will come in.
Yeah, sure. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this. If not, I'm sorry. And I'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.